Hello, hello. Welcome to day 2 of our beginner month-long yoga series. Today's class is an asana and alignment class, so we will be going through different alignment cues in the physical postures. This whole week, the emphasis is on spine and core and back body, although it's yoga, so obviously your whole body is included in basically every pose, but just as a way to kind of categorize. So we will be going through the most common poses that you will see today. We'll be going through tabletop, cat-cow, and then all the poses that you need to know for sun salutation A and sun salutation B. All right, grab any props that you need. I think blocks, especially for beginners or just any type of mellow class, are very welcome. Or you can have a bolster or a pillow. If you don't have blocks, I've heard some people use like a Tupperware or books. If I think of anything else, I'll let you know. But we're gonna get started on hands and knees. If you need something soft under your knees, if you have any pain there, go ahead and place a towel or a blanket or a pillow. All right, so we're gonna find Brahmanasana, tabletop pose. Shoulders stack over your wrists and hips stack over your knees. From here, just take a look down at your hands. You want your index finger facing forward more or less. If you feel tightness in your wrists, you can also turn your hands out a little bit more like you're opening or closing a jar. So the weight goes into your knuckle pads and into your finger pads. A lot of people eventually feel some wrist pain with yoga, and a lot of times that's because we're collapsing down into the wrists instead of using our fingers, kind of like you're suction cupping the energy back into your palm. So you can create some of that tension, pressing down through your knuckle pads and then pushing down through your finger pads and drawing them back slightly. All right, crown of the head reaches forward, the back of the neck is long. So we're not really arching or looking up, just looking at a space a few inches in front of our fingertips. Chin tuck slightly. Spine is nice and straight and long and neutral. We don't really want to find an arch or a round yet. And then look back at your legs. Your toes can be tucked or untucked, whatever is more comfortable for you. And this is just a really nice balancing, bringing both sides together, back together pose. It's a good reset pose. Good to just bring awareness into the body, feeling what body parts are in contact with the mat. From here, we can find some cat-cow, which is my favorite pose of all time, I think, pretty much. So with that, a lot of times we use our breath. So our inhale brings us into cow, this arching posture, and our exhale brings us into cat, this rounding posture. But let's find each one for a few breaths here. So cow pose, you're gonna drop your belly, engage the back body muscles surrounding your spine to lift your tailbone up towards the sky. We're finding an anterior tilt of the pelvis. And then eventually you think about energetically pulling your hands back towards your knees. Again, hands can be on blocks as well. Okay? Energetically pulling your hands back towards your knees, and this helps you pull and thread your heart through towards the front of the mat. So we're creating a nice little hammock shape in our body. If you want, you could untuck the chin, stretch the front of the throat, but if you feel any neck pain with that, totally not necessary. You can keep the gaze nice and neutral. So feel length through the sides of the waists here. You can also think about spiraling your inner thighs back a little bit. Again, toes can be tucked or untucked. And then a lot of people say to rotate your elbows forward, the creases of your elbows forward. That's a good option. I like to think of the actual rotation happening at the shoulders. So we're kind of scooping shoulder blades a little bit onto the back body and then rotating our biceps forward. This is cow pose. All right, cat pose is the exact opposite. We're gonna tuck our chin in towards our chest. Find a posterior tilt of your pelvis. So bringing your tailbone underneath your body, you can think about magnetizing your pubic bone in towards your navel, shortening that space. Now we push the ground away and we round through the back body. So now the shoulder blades separate on the back body. Hold this nice rounded posture for a few breaths. See what that feels like. Core is engaged, pulling everything in towards center. Good. Now let's just move through a couple rounds, breath per movement. Inhale, cow pose, arch. Lift the heart, lift the sit bones up towards the sky. Exhale, cat pose, tuck chin to chest, tug pubic bone up towards your sternum or navel. Push the ground away and round through the back body. Inhale, open it up to cow pose. Exhale, push and round cat pose. Inhale to open. Exhale, round. That is traditional cat-cow. In a lot of my classes, whenever we find tabletop, I really encourage you to just close your eyes and feel into what your body wants that day. So sometimes it's just shifting your hips side to side. Sometimes it's taking some circles out on the wrist. So you can try these for a few rounds. Circling in one direction and the other. You'll feel a nice stretch for your wrists. You'll also feel a nice stretch in your glute as you send your hips back. And you can literally wiggle around and let this look like whatever you want it to look like. Although I wouldn't focus on what it looks like, I would focus on what it feels like. You can also take some barrel rolls. So with that, you're circling side to side and bringing your ribs into play here. So you're tucking and tilting the pelvis, but you're moving your ribs in the opposite direction of your pelvis. So try to take a few circles out in one direction, and then the other direction. This can feel really, really foreign if you've never really found funky, fluid movement in your body before. I would say just pick a point on your body to focus on and see how many directions you can move it, or see what range of motion you can find in it. You can also see where you can direct your breath. So if you find a stretch that feels good and you want to linger there, you can always just take a few breaths into that area, and we think about it expanding. Another good secret is, when in doubt, lead with your pelvis, because that kind of undulates its way through your whole spine. So if you never know how to move, just kind of move your pelvis around, and the rest of your body, your spine, your ribs, your shoulders, kind of follows along. All right, that's cat and cow and tabletop. Let's go through the poses that you need to know for Sun Salutation A and Sun Salutation B. Sun Salutations are really common sequences. I don't know how many breaths total, maybe 8 breaths or so, that you'll often find as a warm-up in a yoga practice, or something to just, get the whole body moving, get your breath moving with different movements, and also as kind of a reset. So if you've been working through a sequence on one side, often you will do a sun salutation to kind of wipe the slate clean and find some balance in your body before you move to the other side. And they just feel good. They're a familiar movement that, again, when in doubt, do a few sun salutations and move your pelvis and spine around, and you'll feel so much better. Okay, let's get started in a forward fold. Actually, we'll get started in mountain pose, Tadasana. So come to the top of your mat. Feet are traditionally, your inner feet touch each other with this narrow stance. If that doesn't feel good for your body, walk them out to hip width distance. I'll try to give modifications as we go. All right, look down at your toes. See if you can feel the different parts of your feet grounding into the mat. So big toes are down. The mound of your big toe, your metatarsal head is down. Your pinky toe is rooted on the opposite side. And weight is evenly distributed from the forefoot to the heel. So find this nice middle ground where you don't feel like you're leaning forward or that you're gonna fall backwards. You're here and you're stable. Your arms are at your sides. And again, traditionally, you're finding external rotation of the shoulders, so palms are facing forward, biceps forward. This is Tadasana, mountain pose. All right, Urdhva Hastasana is upward salute. So as we breathe in, we're gonna sweep our arms up into the side and overhead. Now, if you feel any shoulder pain with that, you can also just reach your arms through center. Really doesn't matter, but if you can find some sort of reach with your arms, or if you don't want to, you can just bring your hands to heart center on the inhale. So inhale, up and overhead, palms face each other. Option to engage your glutes a little bit and gaze up towards the sky. So really opening across the front line of the body, length all the way from outsides of the feet, outsides of the legs, sides of the waist, through your arms as well. Big breath in here. When we breathe in, I need to catch myself on this. Sometimes we like to dump the ribs forward and we lose a little bit of connection with our spine and our core here. So if you think about it, maybe tuck your lower ribs down towards your hip bones as you breathe in. It means you won't find this really pretty back bend, but it doesn't matter what it looks like. Take a breath in, and your ribs obviously move a little bit, but try not to really overemphasize it unless you've done that a ton in your body and you know how to control it. Nothing wrong with that. Breathe in here. Exhale, forward fold, Uttanasana. Again, arms can swan dive out to the side, or they can come through like a prayer position through your heart center. That's our breath out. We fold down. Highly recommend having some blocks here. And for this first one, just bend your knees as much as you need. It's not necessary or necessarily common to be able to straighten all the way. So bring as much bend into your knees as you need and bring the ground up to you with those blocks as well. So for forward fold, we let our head hang heavy. Let your shoulders soften. You can again think about spiraling your inner thighs back a little bit. This is a nice relaxing pose. But if you feel any low back pain or any extreme tension in your hamstrings, just bend your knees more, even until your belly touches your upper thighs. Okay, Uttanasana, forward fold. You can also hold on to opposite elbows and take a little sway of your body side to side. You can nod your head yes or no. Just with your exhale, find a little bit of a release here. All right, next is our inhale. We find a halfway lift, Arda Uttanasana. Again, great place for a block underneath each hand. And for this pose, the goal is to find a flat back. And then we push our sit bones back behind us. So this means probably you will bend into your knees a little bit more. Again, if someone's super open, they could have straight legs, straight spine. I don't think I can do that. I think I find some arching in the low back. So I always like to bend my knees. And you energetically pull your hands back as you stretch your heart forward and the crown of the head forward. Again, the back of the neck is nice and long. This is our halfway lift. And then we'll exhale and we'll fold again, Uttanasana. Now plant your hands at the top of the mat and step back into a plank pose. One foot and then the other. You can always have the option to drop your knees. You always have the option to place those blocks underneath your hands. So plank pose, check your hand placement again. Roll your biceps forward. Tuck your toes and lift your knees if you'd like. And here we push the ground away. Find a little bit of separation of the shoulder blades on the back body, hollowing out in the armpits. Little tuck of your tailbone underneath you to engage the front of the core. This would be a good place to find a mirror or a camera to make sure you're not really moving your pelvis in crazy ways. And you have a nice straight flat line of your body. Good, and if you want to take the modified version, you just drop your knees down right where they are. So it's pretty much an extended tabletop. It's not tabletop where you're perfectly stacked. You're kind of leaning out and forward a little bit. So this is where we would inhale. Exhale is Chaturanga Dandasana. This pose is definitely a challenging one, so by all means take a modification if you need. But what we're gonna do from plank pose is to lower our body halfway. Our elbows hug in towards our side. Okay, so shoulders come to the level of the elbows, and we hold here. Inhale is our upward facing dog. So we scoop our body up, our heart is threading forward, and then we come onto the tops of our feet. Hands are pulling back, glutes are engaged, core is engaged. Good. Now, the modification for that is to go from the knees. So modified plank. Exhale, we can lower our chin and our chest down towards the mat. And then inhale, we scoop forward. To make it easier, you can also leave the upper thighs planted on the mat instead of putting the weight onto the tops of the feet and hovering your hips from the mat. So a couple options, play around with whatever works for you. As you practice more, you'll build your strength, you'll be able to do the full version eventually. But even if you can do the full version, I modify all the time. If you're doing a lot of sun salutations, by all means, take what version you feel like you're going to really be present in and move with your breath without feeling stressed about it or like you can't keep up, okay? So from upward facing dog or cobra, if your thighs are planted, we then push through our hands far forward, come onto the balls of the feet, so we're flipping over the other sides of our feet. Lift your hips high, downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. All right, hands are pushing forward. Our body is in an upside down V shape. Again, bend the knees as much as you need to keep the spine long. There's nothing wrong with having a ton of bend in your knees. Okay, push down through that space between your index finger and your thumb. Spiral your inner thighs up and back. If you're really open, you can start to melt your heels down towards the mat and straighten your legs a little bit more, but if you feel like that takes away from your spinal alignment, then bend your knees more. And then oftentimes when we visit down dog in practice, we encourage you to bend your knees, kind of feel out your shape. We call it pedaling your feet or walking your dog. Just to feel into left and right side of your body. Good, so this is down dog. I don't like to necessarily find a purposeful, really shrugging of the shoulders or pulling them too far down the back body, but just somewhere right in the middle. All right, those are the poses for sun salutation A. We're not gonna necessarily do breath per movement in this class, but we will in the future, but play around with those. One more modification you can take is instead of doing any type of plank or chaturanga, you could, from your forward fold, step back, plant your hands, and just come to a tabletop. And instead, we're gonna inhale to a cow pose instead of upward dog. And then exhale to a cat pose. And then finally push back to down dog. So you could try that option as well. That doesn't include any of the lowering down and pulling up, okay? All right, sun salutation B is a lot less common. I hardly ever teach it, but we'll go through it just in case you come across it. It's a lot more fast paced and the poses require more than what I feel like makes sense in my body with Warrior One, but sometimes it's great and we'll go through it just in case. So we'll start in Tadasana mountain pose. For sun salutation B, on your inhale, you're gonna sit like you're sitting back in a chair. This is Uttanasana chair pose. So knees are stacked pretty much over your toes, your shins are nice and parallel. You're sitting your butt back like you're in a chair. Hands can come to the center of your heart, or arms can stretch overhead, fingertips reaching towards the sky. Your biceps frame out your ears, okay? Now take out that little arch of the low back and think about drawing your hip bones and your lower ribs together. This is an inhale. Exhale, Uttanasana again, forward fold. Good, inhale, we halfway lift. Think about a flat back. Plant your hands, step back into your plank, move through that vinyasa again, whatever version you want. If you want to do the cat-cow, if you want to drop your knees, if you want to take the full version. We exhale to lower. Inhale, upward facing dog, your heart opener. Exhale, flip over your feet, downward facing dog. Now, big transition here is our inhale. We step our right foot forward. This is where blocks will come in handy to create more space underneath your body to step the foot through. Because for a lot of people, honestly, it's hard to find enough compression in your hip and your core to bring your foot to the top of the mat. But if you elevate yourself on blocks, you gain about 6 inches on the middle setting. Okay, right foot steps to the front of the mat. Lower your left heel down at an angle, 45-degree angle. This is done so fast-paced in practice, but we're just taking our time here. Now, take a peek at your hips. The tendency is going to want to open out to the left. Think about drawing your right hip crease back and pulling your left hip crease forward. And then we inhale, come to rise in this Warrior One, Virabhadrasana 1 pose. Arms stretch high again, or come to heart center, whatever is available in your shoulders. Okay. Another modification that I like a lot better is to find a high lunge. So instead of swiveling the left heel down at an angle, you can come onto the ball of the left foot. The heel reaches up towards the sky, hips are square. It's just a lot easier to find that good pelvic alignment as opposed to this. But whatever you want to do. Depends if you're a more traditional person or modification person. So we inhale here. Exhale, plant your hands, step your right foot back, move through that vinyasa again. When I say move through your vinyasa, that's a very common phrase you'll hear, and it just means your rhythmic, ritualistic, wipe the slate clean movement. Most traditionally, it is the plank, chaturanga, upward facing dog, downward facing dog, but again, make it your own. But that's what it means when we say move through your vinyasa. Also, I didn't say this at first, but Sun Salutation A and B, it's also called Surya Namaskar A and B, if you ever hear that in class. Okay, so we're back in our downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. Next, we step our left foot forward. So same thing, left foot between your thumbs, swivel your right foot down this time. Push left hip crease back, draw right hip bone forward. Look at your feet. If balance is an issue or just mobility in your hips, instead of really bisecting the back arch of the foot with the front heel, take a step out wider. So instead of being on like a tightrope, you're more on train tracks, just a little wider base of support. All right, inhale, we reach up with our arms. Warrior One, bend your left knee as far as you feel comfortable. Good. Exhale, plant your hands down to frame out your left foot. Step back, move through your vinyasa. Upward facing dog, downward facing dog. Good. Now exhale, we step to the front of the mat with both feet. Forward fold. Grab those blocks if you want them. Inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold, release. Inhale, Uttanasana, chair pose. Bend your knees, send your hips back, arms reach high. And exhale, Tadasana. So again, that's a really fast-paced one. We might explore doing that breath per movement. We might not, but you can just practice those. Find especially what feels good in your body when we say move through your vinyasa. Don't forget with the Warrior One, you're also welcome to find more of a lunge position by lifting the heel and putting the weight on the ball of the foot. All right, work with your cat-cow, find some wiggles in your body, and then just play around with moving breath with movement. So inhales to open up, usually exhales to curl and round or compress. Okay, have fun playing around with those. Hopefully that was a succinct but thorough explanation. If you have any questions, let me know, and I'll see you next time.